Italy may have lost the World Cup, but yesterday Roberto Conti gave them some consolation as he celebrated Brazilian style on Alpe d'Huez. Overall, Conti moves to 6th, Pantani climbs to 5th, and Luc Leblanc goes up to 3rd. They're all behind Miguel Indurain. With the Alpe behind them, Bourg-d'Oisans is the start for another severe day in the mountains. More than 60 riders have now abandoned the Tour de France. The first climb comes after only 36 kilometres, the Col de Madeleine, and carries the race up to 1,924 metres. The one that follows is the Col de la Madeleine, a renowned climb in the race's history and slightly higher at 1,984 metres. And then the long ascent begins of more than 30 kilometres to the highest point at Val Thorens at 2,275 metres. And that's where we are now, and the race already on its way towards us. This is day 2 in the Alps of 4 very tough days this year, and the battle for second place in Paris is certain to continue. But Miguel Indurain has built a big lead, and now he rides a very clever race tactically. Yesterday he controlled the field with his own experience and indeed with the help of a very willing team. Here's Paul Sherwin now to explain more.
Miguel Indurain is the undisputed leader of the pack and his own team. In this instance, he sprints forward to order Erwin Nijboer to stop setting the pace. When the race goes into the mountains, the orders will change. Indurain will use his teammates at the front to dictate the pace that he wants, to either chase down breakaways or even to nullify attacks. He will ride in a slipstream to save as much energy as possible, because once the race reaches the high mountains, the responsibility of leadership lies solely on his shoulders. With 3 big mountains today, he'll have to use all his strength and tactical know-how to get him through the stage.
Well, thank you, Paul. Well, this is what happened on the first climb today, the Col de Madeleine, and Indurain having no problem controlling the field because they're not in the mood for racing at all. Riding up at around about 12 to 15 kilometres an hour, but you never know what will happen, and this happened at the back of the field, and it's Marco Pantani, the great climber, in collision with Alberto Elli, and Pantani has come off the worst. He's hurt his left knee and his left arm and is stunned. Teammates who waited for him are Mario Montalvan, Remo Rossi, Mario Chiesa. They got him almost back to the field, but there was a small acceleration. He went off the back again, continually visiting the doctor and obviously in pain. Over the top of the climb, it was Richard Virenque winning a bunch sprint on top of a first category climb ahead of Peter de Klerk and Oscar Pelliccioli. And in fact, over the top, Pantani was 1 minute behind the field with a lot of work to do. The field then began the long descent, stringing out as they headed off now down towards the valley, and now next will be the long climb of the Col de la Madeleine, and it remains to be seen whether indeed Pantani will be with them. We've completed the long descents, and now the attacks have started on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. In fact, they started about halfway up when Bjarne Riis, Peter Ugrumov, the 2G Risk team riders, and Nelson Rodriguez of the ZG team, they went clear. But now we're watching the scrap here as the other riders try to join them. Indurain now also being forced out of the group. Pantani, despite his injury, has attacked, and in fact he's countered an attack made by his teammate Vladimir Pulnikov. The rivalry continuing among the two Carrera riders. This is Richard Virenque, who's going with Pantani again, his rival, his serious rival for the King of the Mountains competition. So Pantani then at the moment is chasing Vladimir Pulnikov. Ahead of Pulnikov is Jim van der Leer, one of the few Belgians who really can climb. And then about 1 minute and 40 seconds ahead of Pantani are the 3 leaders, and it's Peter Ugrumov, Bjarne Riis and Rodriguez. They've been climbing all of the climb in that order, all of the work being done by Ugrumov, who is lying overall in 9th position. We're now looking here at Miguel Indurain on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. 1 minute 40, he is behind now the riders who attacked midway up, Bjarne Riis, Ugrumov and Nelson Rodriguez.
And it looks now as if Miguel Indurain has decided enough is enough
on the slopes of the climb here, because he's put the pressure on, and that pressure has got rid of Luc Leblanc, who was lying in third place overall this morning. Armand de las Cuevas is a lot way further down the mountain as well, and Indurain just with a slight acceleration came straight up to Pantani. What an incredible man.
And the man they want today is the man at the front of these three leaders on the top as we come towards the top of the Col de la Madeleine. It is Peter Ugrimov, because he lies 9th overall. He's 14 minutes plus off the lead of Indurain, but of course Pantani would like to make sure he doesn't open too much of a gap on him and catch him up in the overall classification. Bjorn Ries in second place has struggled all the way up, yet he's managed to sit in there in second place. And Rodriguez, he's really been along for the ride. He's done nothing whatsoever. He has just sat there and let the other two, because he knows the other two want to open the gap over that chase group, and he's taking full advantage of it.
Well, Ries is really going to regret the 15 minutes he lost on the stage. We went over to Mont Ventoux, because at that time he was lying in 7th place overall. Now he's some 25 minutes behind Miguel Indurain, and that 15 minutes would have put him as a serious contender today. But Ugrimov doing all the work. He's going to try and get over the top with his teammate Bjorn Ries, and then the two of them can work together to try and keep that deficit ahead of Miguel Indurain on the descent.
So the top of the Col de la Madeleine, nobody is going to challenge Peter Ugrimov, who's led all of the way up it since the attack was launched, followed over the top by his Danish teammate Bjorn Ries, who now zips up ready for the plunge to the valley below. If the newspapers are offered, I'm sure they'll take them. And in third place, Nelson Rodriguez. Those are the three men over the top of the Col de la Madeleine. This is the battle now for the next men over. And Marco Pantani, you can still see on his knee there the bloodstain of the crash on the descent before they made the climb of the Col du Glandon. But he seems to be settling back in again now. These really are the cream. Pantani, Verenk second overall, Miguel Indurain here, who is the leader, of course, and Alex Zula trying to climb away from the 10th place he currently occupies, because he really was expected to be a top 4 finish in Paris. And taking the points again away from Pantani and making that polka dot jersey look realistically his now is Richard Verenk. He pulls away and snatches 4th place at the top, and behind him 5th for Pantani. And that we would never have thought a few miles ago when he had that crash and looked to be going out of the Tour.
Well, it's fantastic to see that he has recovered, but a little bit further down, it looks as if Luc Leblanc has recovered somewhat as well as we come up to the top. It's going to be it's going to be Richard Verenk. In fact, Miguel Indurain decided, look, boys, don't forget I'm the strong man here. So he went over ahead of Richard Verenk, but a little bit further back, it looks as if Luc Leblanc has recovered, and he should reintegrate with the yellow jersey group on the descent.
Well, just look at this. This really is a sad sight. He was 3rd overall. Yesterday, he dropped to 4th. And today, the 2nd day in the Alps, he really has cracked Armand de las Cuevas, losing now more than 5 minutes as he struggles to the top of the Col de la Madeleine. And he still has the long climb of Val Thorens to come. So after the long descent off the Col de la Madeleine, the leaders have now begun the long ascent to the top of Val Thorens, the high spot of this year's Tour de France. And so there are now only 2 of the original 3 leaders. The man who's worked with his teammates finally was shed by his teammate Peter Ugrimov attacking, and instead of getting rid of Nelson Rodriguez, he got rid of his own man Bjorn Ries. Ries has been dispatched back to a group of about 15 riders being led by Pascal Lino and Miguel Indurain. He's almost caught by them now, and the gap of these 2 men over that Indurain group has come down as well to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. There's the chase group, just gone clear of them, Val Thorens of Denmark, and they've swept up Bjorn Ries, who's passed through the bunch here. And now on the far side of the road, we've waited for the attack, and it looks as though Pantani is going to launch the attack at around about 5 kilometers to go. And Pantani goes now again, Paul. This is the 5th time he's done this. Surely he can't bridge 3 minutes.
Well, he may well not be able to, but I think you've got to take your hat off to this man because he's had a terrible day today. He had that crash very early on the Col de Madeleine, and in fact I was quite convinced he may well abandon it. Took him a lot of time to get going, and he has tried. Luc Leblanc has decided, no, I don't think I can stay with him. I'll stay with the security of the yellow jersey group because I think this man is going to blow me away. And he really has got a fantastic attack as soon as it goes uphill.
So smooth, he is a pure climber. It's a pity he's never had a real shot at a stage win at all, except the very first time he went onto the mountains in the Pyrenees at Hautecam, where he did go and was the leader on the road, and he fell short by a couple of kilometers when he blew and hit the wall, and Miguel Indurain, in a very powerful force that day, went by him. But now he's going again, and our caption says Luc Leblanc, but in fact this, believe me, as we all know, the man in white is Marco Pantani. And now he's off in pursuit just ahead of him, and not very far ahead of him, and I think we can see him. Yes, we can. That's Val Thorens, who attacked about a kilometre further down the mountain, and now we'll see the difference. This is the situation of 4 kilometres, and the two riders continuing to plod happily on. But Paul, now there's exactly a kilometre between them. Can they do it?
Well, I tell you one thing, if there's one man in this whole race can bridge the gap to those two leaders, this is the man we're looking at now, number 56, Marco Pantani. He's got the speed, he's had a tough day, and I think he'll try and offer this stage to Claudio Chiappucci, because he would so dearly love to have Claudio Chiappucci here with him today, and that's not possible. Chiappucci left the race in the Pyrenees, and Pantani has jumped clear of the main field, and he's really got the hammer down now.
Well, now we see the reaction of Indurain, and there isn't really a great deal of reaction at all. He continues to drive the group along. Pantani has picked up Val Thorens, and now look at that, he just accelerates straight through Sorensen, a stage winner this year on the Tour for the first time, as under the banner goes the yellow jersey. And what's the gap, Paul?
Well, I'm waiting for the Pantani to come up to the 4-kilometre banner here, because it's more important for me to see just how far behind he is at the 4-kilometre mark on the two leaders, and he's flying away from them now at the moment.
And so Pantani, a true climber, just keeps his rhythm, jumps out of the saddle, lifted, gets back into the saddle again, pedals a low gear.
Well, look at this, he really doesn't think about anything but going uphill as fast as he can. If we can just get alongside him and see the concentration on his face, you can still see the scars of that crash that he had earlier in the day. He had a long time trying to get back into his rhythm, and he really did suffer on the first few kilometres of the Col de Madeleine.
And there we have Indurain, and he's got for company Roberto Conti again on his right, and on his left is Alex Zula. And he's now left to do all of the work. His Benesto team actually on this climb today were dropped very early on. He's on his own, he's unprotected if he does have a problem. And he's having to now finish off every stage of the Tour in the mountains himself. His team may be getting tired.
Well, this is Marco Pantani coming up to the 4-kilometre banner, and he's taken back almost a minute in those 2 minutes since he's attacked, so he's really flying up the mountain here. It's quite interesting to know that these days, when the riders come into the mountains, when I was racing, they would use a 42-tooth sprocket on the front of their chain rings, and nowadays they've gone down to a 38-tooth sprocket, which allows them to actually have much closer gear ratios than they would normally.
So that gives them a lesser jump in pedaling revolutions as they change through the gears. And Indurain, as always, pedals a little bit of a lower gear than everybody else. He's a very supple rider, and as you can see, he just sits there and turns like a windmill, while the riders behind tend to push a slightly higher gear to hang on. You have to be a tremendously good rider to pedal quickly like that. You'll see that the non-climbers tend to ride a higher gear and just try to use brute force to keep up with him.
That's the big advantage Miguel Indurain has. Although he's an extremely strong rider, when he goes into a climbing situation, he can use a very small gear and climb subtly. 3 kilometres to go for the two leaders, and let's hope that Marco Pantani can get back into contention. He really is flying along. Now, the big problem for the two leaders is they're going to start watching each other, because Piotr Ugramov has tried once or twice to get clear from those two riders. And looking at his chainring here, most of the other riders in this race are on this small chainring, and he's going up here on the big chainring.
Unbelievable. I think, you know, the crash has released so much adrenaline now that he is a man very, very determined to at last get a stage win. He's trying to bridge what we thought was an impossible gap at this stage of the race. He's flying across it at the moment. This is Pantani, and 35 seconds his lead now over the Maillot Jaune and Miguel Indurain. But of course, we're more interested to see him pass under that 3-kilometre banner to get a fix on him on the two riders up front.
Well, all the work now is being left up to Miguel Indurain. He doesn't have any teammates left in this group. He has to set the tempo. He realizes that the tempo he can set is uncomfortable enough to prevent any more attacks. He's not too worried, I don't think, about Marco Pantani at the moment. He'll be looking to see what the situation is behind 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So it's coming down pretty rapidly for Marco Pantani. He really has got to give it everything he's got over the last couple of kilometers. But, you know, I think once again he's left it a little bit too late to try and get across to get the stage victory. Well, the latest time check on Marco Pantani now is 2 minutes 05, so he really is eating into that lead. This is Val Thorens, who was away at the bottom of the climb. He's about to get picked up by Miguel Indurain's yellow jersey group. Looks over his shoulder there to see what the situation is. A great ride by Sorensen today, a kind of ride I wouldn't have expected to see so far to the front in the mountains, but he made a great descent of the Col de Madeleine to come back into Miguel Indurain's group just before the feeding station.
So Sorensen tried and failed. As we move up to 2 kilometers to go, and under the banner now goes Ugrimov and Nelson Rodriguez. Rodriguez, by the way, is 23rd overall, 26 minutes, almost 27 minutes behind the race leader, while Ugrimov is 9th overall, 14 minutes back, and is possibly going to improve that position. He should in fact move up above Alberto Elli. He could even go up to 7th or even 6th overall tonight if he gets the time, of course. So now they're coming up towards the 1.5 kilometre to go point, and Peter Ugrimov and Nelson Rodriguez are under pressure from Pantani, but they may have just about hung on to share the fight for the stage win here.
Well, it's been a fantastic ride by Peter Ugrimov. In fact, they took advantage of the launching of the attack by the Once squad. Now, as we get near to the finish, Ugrimov taking a chance to tighten up his shoes just to make sure that everything is right when it comes to the sprint. He doesn't want a mistake. Swings across the right-hand side of the road, takes a little look here, and that's very dangerous, because every time they slow down like this, it gives Marco Pantani the little more chance to come back into contention.
Well, they could well play the cat and mouse tactics we normally reserve for the velodromes around the world when they go sprinting. 1 minute and 3, Pantani is flying away from the group here of Miguel Indurain, and he is gaining time. Overall, he is 5th. He will go over De Las Cuevas, no problem tonight. But, you know, Luc Leblanc is also the next target man now for Pantani, who could well find himself up to 3rd overall with this attack tonight. And he certainly deserves that as a reward for his constant attacking towards the end of every mountain stage.
Well, at the 2 kilometre banner, it was 1 minute and 50 seconds, so it looked as if his chances are really going out of the window. But a great ride by Pantani. But even so, if those two riders at the front play the cat and mouse tactics we usually see on the track, then it could be they could get a big surprise and see Marco Pantani coming up from behind.
And now they're slowing down all of the time, these two. Nelson Rodriguez now totally refuses to go in front of Ugrimov. He does not want to be surprised by a sprint from the Latvian rider from behind. Rodriguez offered no assistance at all for the majority of this breakaway. He's always wanted to play the man at the back of the group, because he knows that Ugrimov is racing for a high finish overall in the Tour de France. There is the kite, 1 kilometre to go. And so there is still a chance here that Pantani will actually move up to 3rd place overall, but I think there's now very good reason for doubt he won't pick up these two. We'll see how they react. The only thing in the favour of Pantani is it climbs all the way to the finishing line. There's no respite, and so if they do slow down, they will slow down rather dramatically. There's the miss which is causing the problems with our pictures to you today, as we come now to the highest point of this year's Tour de France, and it is extremely cold up here today. I would say that temperatures have now gone to around about 47 degrees Fahrenheit.
It looks to me now as if Ugrimov is starting to have 1 or 2 problems, because 3 or 4 times he's actually tried to tighten up his shoes, and very often the shoes have a Velcro fastener. The shoes that he's wearing, the brand, actually have a key to turn on the top there, and he's tightened them once or twice, and it may well be he's got a little problem there. Nelson Rodriguez, on the other hand, doesn't look quite so bad, and it's going to be a very close sprint between these two riders. The Colombian is an excellent finisher, but it's always difficult when you come to the top of a mountain to try and sort out the sprint when it's in the final few hundred meters.
Well, conditions have become so bad we can't even pick you up a picture from about 600 meters away now. We're going to have to go to our fixed finish cameras here and see the sprint started. Colombia have yet to win a stage of the Tour de France. They've come close, they've had second places, but now they're looking for the victory here from the smallest man in the race, Nelson Rodriguez. As the crowd start to applaud, I should imagine the sprint has also started, and the man in blue is Peter Ugrimov, and he's got the lead, as he has had virtually throughout this breakaway. He's now trying to force the Colombian to open the attacking on his left shoulder. It's going to be a close sprint indeed, though, as they go briefly into this tunnel at 400 meters from the line. Now, we may lose pictures in the tunnel here. In fact, we've got a fixed camera in the tunnel, so we're going to see them right through the tunnel as we come out of it at 400 meters to go now. And I think Ugrimov is going to more or less give this to the little Colombian, because he's going to lead him out too easily. And we would expect the Colombian climber to have something of a reasonable finish. Certainly Ugrimov is not a great sprinter, but he's trying desperately to force the Colombian to do something about it, but this little man is not going to be outmaneuvered at this stage. He must have more strength left than Ugrimov, because he sat at the back for virtually the whole of the day. Ugrimov starts, he'll probably weave him across towards the barriers and pretend he doesn't know he's there, if he can squeeze something out of him. But in fact, Nelson Rodriguez now is starting to fire well and comes through quite clearly the winner, as the man who's done all of the work and slams his handlebars, Ugrimov, gives way to Rodriguez of Colombia on the line. And there is the rider now speeding up. Look how close he got, Paul, because he's now into the tunnel, and so he closed dramatically over those last 2 kilometres.
Well, he's closed to more than 3 minutes on these two leaders. In fact, he's going to be less than 45 seconds behind at the top. What a shame. I really wish that this man could have won the stage today. I had him down as one of my favourites. He's done an incredible ride over the last 4 or 5 kilometres and bridged an enormous gap. Just a couple more kilometres, and this is the man who would have taken the stage victory today after such a terrible day for him when he crashed and was so close to abandoning. You can still see the scar on his knee there as he comes up to the last couple of 100 metres.
So robbed again, and this is the 5th time in the mountains he's made a late run for gold, and he's been robbed again. And don't forget, today he crashed very early on the Col de Madeleine, and he must at some stage have contemplated retiring from the Tour de France. He recovered because the race went so slowly until they crossed the Col de la Madeleine, and my goodness me, he showed them he was well back on form when he came up here to the finish of Val Thorens. 1 minute and 7 seconds behind on the line. Tremendous climb by Pantani. So 2:12 is the time, which will cost LeBlanc his 3rd place overall to Marco Pantani, and it's going to be very, very close indeed. And that's why LeBlanc is having to lead out here, and he sat up.
In fact, I think it's cracked, Phil. He really tried to get across there, and he got into the tunnel and realised he'd gone too far out, and he lost all the weight.
So, and he's lost 3rd place at the moment in the Tour de France. Marco Pantani up to 5th yesterday, up to 3rd today, despite the crash. And it's left to Miguel Indurain now to take 4th place. And in fact, Luc Leblanc is hanging on to the tail of his teammate Richard Virenque, who will be the next man in the sight of Marco Pantani, perhaps tomorrow, as Virenque takes on Indurain, gets his revenge from the top of the Col de la Madeleine and beats Indurain to the line for 4th place.
You could be watching next year's tour live by entering our competition. Entry forms are in this issue of Bicycling Australia magazine. First prize is 2 tickets flying Cathay Pacific to Paris at any time of your choice within the next 12 months. You could also win one of 26 great consolation prizes. Also inside Bicycling Australia are 2 chances to win your choice of a Carbo Look 660 carbon fibre bicycle or a Mavic Zap electronic gear system. So get pedalling, get Bicycling Australia magazine and send your entries to SBS Television.
So the first win to Colombia in this year's Tour de France, Nelson Rodriguez slipping by Peter Ugrimov, and then came that wonderful chase down, but Marco Pantani having to be content with 3rd place, Richard Virenque 4th, and Miguel Indurain taking 5th. On the podium tonight, Nelson Rodriguez, and I'm not surprised he's a happy man. But De Los Cuevas, well, he's very unhappy. He finished in a group led home by Sean Yates, 20 minutes and 1 second behind, but at least he was inside the official time limit. The time limit today was 7%, and more than 60 riders should have been eliminated from the Tour. But the organiser asked the race referees if they would allow the time limit to be extended to 10%, and they agreed. So everybody was reinstated. Indurain keeps his big lead in the Tour de France, but now Marco Pantani continues to climb up towards that coveted second place. He's up to third now, and in second place is Richard Virenque. The leaders in the other competitions, by the way, the King of the Mountains is being led very convincingly now by Richard Virenque, ahead of Pantani. And in the points competition for the green jersey, it is almost safe now to say that the man who'll wear that all the way to Paris will be Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov. The team is being led by Festina, and they had another good day today. We stay in the Alps for another tough day tomorrow, including the Col de Madeleine, as we continue our journey towards Paris. Until then, on behalf of Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.